Heyo, how you doing? I'm sorry that my live style today is post shower fresh face, but that's how it's gonna roll. I got a facial on Monday, and I've been trying to let my skin air out or working on some things. I have a little bit of inflammation right here going on, a little bit almost like bumps, but not like acne, and so I've been trying to not wear any makeup. She gave me a lactic acid serum that I've been trying to use. So I'm fresh faced post shower. I know you guys are gonna ask, so this is decaf coffee because it's 5 o'clock, and I usually just in the evenings I love to sip on something warm, and if I don't feel like tea, I'll do decaf instant coffee, and add a little bit of honey and some collagen, and then after this I'm gonna eat dinner. So I just want something to sip on to keep my blood sugar stable. So you guys can throw your questions at me. I know I did an impromptu live yesterday, which probably messed people up, but today's our real live at 5. So just FYI, it's gonna be okay. How do you know if you're actually absorbing minerals, vitamins from your food? That's a really good question, and I think a lot of people with digestive issues, bloating, uh, indigestion, IBS, they should assume that they're not absorbing their food very well or assimilating those nutrients, or they're getting a limited amount of breakdown. That's why I'm always conscious of people who have digestive issues, IBS, bloating, irritation, because I know that you're eating frequently, you're working hard on balancing blood sugar, but if you're not digesting that food really well, you're going to have a problem. But usually it's going to be that you are not feeling like you're digesting that food well. It kind of sits like a rock. It moves slowly through. It's digested pretty poorly. Everything's really sluggish. Where am I in California? I'm in Southern California, kind of outside of in the middle of San Diego and Los Angeles. So about 45 minutes from the coast. What kind of decaf instant? Oh, I was just looking at the name. It's rainforest something. Gosh, I just get at the local health food store. It's a rainforest something. I'll post it on my stories tomorrow, just so you can see it. But yeah, it is just a Swiss water processed decaf instant coffee. Which brand of women's multivitamin do you recommend for someone after the age of 50? And what should I take that multivitamin with as far as food and other supplements to make it available in my body? I'm not a big fan of multis. I don't really, recommend a multivitamin. I think supplementation should be done a lot more targeted for people, due to, according to what's going on. Things like grass-fed beef liver and oysters once a week are always really supportive nutrient-dense foods. But I'm a big advocate of food first in a nutrient-dense diet and using supplements for exactly what they are, which are just supplements, right? We're just supplementing the things that our body might need more of for a little while. Magnesium is always a good idea because so many people are deficient. But yeah, I couldn't really say a multivitamin. I'm not a big fan of them because there's so many different compounds in there that you don't know. Most of them are not in the right form. You don't know how you're absorbing them. So it's just one of those things that's hard to nail down. Is nail polish all terrible, or is it just certain ingredients? A lot of it is terrible. There are some more natural brands. They're probably not going to be as high performing. So for me, it's just kind of a trade-off. If you're someone that paints your nails all the time, you always have a new manicure, you're always painting your nails, it's probably a good idea to invest in non-toxic nail polish, or at least the least toxic you can find. If you are someone that's the occasional manicure, I don't think it's a problem. Just do you. If you're doing gel polish constantly, it does last longer, so you're not getting it as often. I think for me, I limit the amount of toxins in my environment and in my food so that I can make splurges, like getting my hair colored and doing nail polish from time to time, and I really don't stress about it. But if I have active hormonal issues going on or active imbalances, I'm a lot more careful with the toxins I'm exposed to. So it just really depends on context. I'm not someone's no polish is toxic. Yeah, it really is. But it's always in context. If it's the only toxic thing that you do, it's probably going to be fine. If it's something that you do kind of like every couple of weeks, it's probably going to be fine. But if you're doing it constantly, that's something I would maybe replace. I've been looking at, it's like there's a one that came up on Amazon that supposedly is all natural. I want to look into it more, but like Cirque colors, CIRQUE. They have a lot of like beautiful like holographic nail polishes and all different types of colors. I know butter nail polish is a little bit less toxic. There's one called Piggy Paint that's for kids. It's super non-toxic. So there's quite a bit of non-toxic nail polishes out there. You just kind of have to look. I've been told I have high blood pressure, reasons, and what helps lower it. Usually it's those solvent minerals, so potassium and sodium tend to be in balance, and then usually magnesium is a problem. Those are like the first things that I would explore. The second thing I would explore is just stress in general, what could be causing you to be under pressure and pumping more blood or be having more blood pressure. But yeah, usually it's a sodium and potassium issue. What would be a good starting dose for inositol for PCOS and insulin resistance? Honestly, that's not one of my favorite supplements. It's not something that I recommend often or work with often, so I think that's more of on you and for experimenting yourself. I usually just go by the dose that's on the bottle and start there. But yeah, inositol is not like my favorite supplement. It's not that it doesn't work. For the people that need it, it really does work. But for the people that don't, or it doesn't shift their microbiome in a positive direction, they don't really see any results from it. So it just really depends on who you are and what your body is going through. When should we utilize trace mineral drops? Usually I will put them in my morning, like I'll do like a little morning lemon water. So I will usually utilize them in the morning, or I'll put them in my water that I drink throughout the day, like my actual water bottles. So it just kind of depends, but I'm usually putting them in something throughout the day. Hi Jess, any magnesium capsules you like and trust if we don't do the milk of magnesia? It just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Magnesium glycinate is good. You're looking for the least amount of fillers as possible. So Pure Encapsulations makes a pretty good one. Doctor's Best is okay. Goodnight Maggie, it's called. Goodnight Maggie on Corganic is really good. Corganic.com. They have one called it's called Wake Up Maggie and Goodnight Maggie, and those are both really good supplements. Keep in mind, if your boron levels are low, you're going to have a really hard time retaining magnesium. So keep in mind, boron helps magnesium stay within the cell, and I have a lot of clients who have really low boron, and so they're taking magnesium, but they're not getting a lot of the results from magnesium because they don't have enough boron to keep it in the cell. So Wake Up Maggie is both a boron and a magnesium supplement, so that's why it's really nice. But yeah, Pure Encapsulations, I think you can get it on Amazon, and it's a pretty clean brand. LDL cholesterol 262. Do you think thyroid issues following FN for 7 months was around 200 before? Yeah, that's something I would definitely explore when it comes to cholesterol. Also check out Isaac Pullman and Tomo Littlewood on Instagram if you don't already follow them. They talk about cholesterol quite a bit. They have a few really good posts on cholesterol that'll help kind of open your eyes to cholesterol. And then Ray Peat's article on cholesterol, if you haven't already read it, that's really excellent as well. I think we can kind of get really scared about cholesterol, and so it's good to kind of educate ourselves first and foremost. But yeah, I would definitely explore if you're getting enough red light, whether that's via sunlight or red light therapy device. How's your vitamin A levels? That's another thing to consider. Like, are you getting enough vitamin A rich foods? And then how's your thyroid? So full thyroid panel, including reverse T3, because you want to make sure that you don't have stress hormones turning active thyroid hormone into an inactive form. So yeah, definitely something to explore, but usually the more cholesterol we have, the harder we're having a time converting. And the reason why I bring red light up is because we need both vitamin A, thyroid hormone, and red light to convert cholesterol into sex hormones, cortisol, progesterone. And when we don't have those things, or we don't have enough of those things, we can actually have higher cholesterol. Sometimes what can happen is when you start increasing your metabolism, your needs for vitamin A go up. And so before your cholesterol wasn't as high because you were converting just fine, but then as your metabolism increases, your need for vitamin A went up, and now you are in need of vitamin A. So there's quite a few factors, but yeah, I would definitely look into a full thyroid panel for sure. How is MSG as an ingredient in food? Not a good idea. It's a protein that's been kind of processed. Honestly, it's something that's gonna kind of like excite your brain and excite your taste buds. So remember, monosodium glutamate will definitely show itself in many forms, including like something like hydrolyzed yeast extract. Unfortunately, there's so many names for MSG. So it's a good idea to I guess avoid it for the most part if you can. I mean, the occasional eating of it's gonna be mostly found in like processed foods and certain foods like Chinese food. But if you're kind of avoiding processed foods, you're probably not gonna get a lot of it at all. And then when it comes to, a lot of people will like to mention that collagen technically has some MSG in it, and that's a different scenario because yeah, there are going to be MSG is just a manipulated protein, and so when you take gelatin and turn it into collagen, there is going to be some natural MSG made in the processing of that protein, but it's not like they're adding MSG. It's a natural process that could occur. So that's why some people don't really do well on collagen. So those are some things to keep in mind, but yeah, MSG is not a good idea. So if you're regularly consuming it, I wouldn't do that. Do you eat apple peels? I do occasionally when I feel like an apple. I'm not gonna like stress about it. If I'm gonna make like applesauce or something like that, I will peel the apples, or like dried apples, I'll peel the apples. But yeah, if I'm just gonna have something quick, like the nice thing about an apple is you could throw it in your purse really quick and eat it later. It's like a crate, like fast food. So I'm someone that's not gonna like stress about the apple peel because I don't really eat a lot of apples. Maybe if I ate a lot of apples, I would think about peeling them, but I find that would probably be a little bit annoying. Is Redmond's salt a good way to get trace minerals? I prefer sea salt just because rock salt and land salt tends to have more of a tendency to be contaminated with heavy metals and iron, and so I personally will use sea salt more than I use pink salt, but yeah, it does have some trace minerals in it for sure, but it's not going to have like the trace minerals that something like Shilajit would have, or something like that, like a multi-mineral. Does hot water damage collagen the same way it does vitamin C? Like, is it better to do it in warm? I don't really go by that practice. I mean, I'm sure a lot of things are heat sensitive in nature. It's just kind of like very rarely would we be exposed to such high heats, but I wouldn't really worry about collagen. It tends to be okay in hot or cold water. Remember, when you make like Jell-O, you have to almost get it to boiling, so it does do okay. Hey, what type of collagen are you using these days? I think you mentioned Vital Proteins. Thanks. I personally use Great Lakes. I've always used Great Lakes for the most part. For me, Vital Proteins doesn't work. It gives me really bad headaches. So that tells me that there's probably something in the processing that doesn't work well for me. So Great Lakes for me is the best. I've tried a lot of different brands, and I just never have a problem with Great Lakes. I'm reading a book right now about syncing with your cycle, and she says to ditch caffeine and dairy for breast cyst pain, which is confusing because I'm enjoying both. I'm assuming maybe like you're going by like Alyssa Vitti, like The Flow Living or something like that. And they have a very like heavy vegan emphasis. So you have to really understand the bias of the authors that you guys are reading, because they're going to inflict their own experience and their own bias into their protocols. I'm looking at biochemistry, I'm looking at biology, I'm looking at traditional eating, how we ate, 500 years ago. No one was like, hey, can I have nut cheese? Because I don't really do dairy. There was no such thing. And so for me, I'm looking at women's biology and what we need. And we need fat-soluble vitamins that you can't get from plant foods. So that's just my take on it, but you kind of have to use your own discernment and choose. I have a lot of followers that are getting really confused because they are reading they're taking everything as Bible. They're reading a ton of different information and they're like taking all of those things in like it's fact, and it's very confusing. So it's very important to put your discernment glasses on and figure out what you believe about the female body. If you believe that the female body needs to be nourished and needs to be supported on a cellular level, your eating style is going to look very different than someone who believes you need to detox constantly and do all these, weird things that are not supportive of your biochemistry. Those are going to look like two very separate things. So it's just important to kind of take information in and take what works for you and don't take what doesn't work for you. It's important to sync with your cycle, but I find that some of her information is a little weird and wonky, personally. Best probiotic for a woman just starting the journey of trying to heal PCOS and Hashimoto's. I'm not I don't think we need to be this is the best probiotic for this person. Spore-based probiotics tend to be good, or biophages, so things that has phage technology. I believe Dr. Tobias's is phage technology, as well as I know Life Extension's GI Assist is phage technology. But I personally prefer spore-based probiotics like Just Thrive or Mega Spore Biotic. She also says caffeine affects fertility, but I'm wondering at what amounts. What do you recommend if labs show low iron? I highly recommend looking into Morley Robbins and listening to a few of his podcasts on copper dysregulation and iron. Maybe Mito Life Radio, Matt Blackburn's podcast. He did a podcast called Why Minerals Run the Show. Caffeine does not affect fertility unless you're chugging it on an empty stomach. When you use caffeine like a drug, it's going to be very different than if you use caffeine as a supplement. Like I always tell you guys, never drink coffee on an empty stomach. Never drink it black. It always should have a protein, a sugar, and a fat in it. And it should always be after a nutrient-dense meal. If you have really bad blood sugar issues, ditch it for a while until you can handle it. But caffeine almost acts like an adaptogen, and it's very misunderstood these days. And a lot of people that say caffeine is bad for you in the same breath will say, oh, drink matcha, which is very full of fluoride naturally. Green tea leaves are very rich in fluoride, which are directly anti-thyroid, which will affect your fertility. So it's just really interesting to me how people relay information with fear-mongering, and they don't ever try to just understand the substance. Where would someone be coming from if they were saying you should avoid caffeine or you should have caffeine? I understand why they're saying you're not supposed to have caffeine, but it's not a good enough argument for me. It just means that you have internal imbalances and you continue to blame the food itself. People love to blame dairy for their issues. People love to blame coffee for their issues, when in reality it's internal imbalances driving the reaction to those foods. And instead of focusing internally, instead of focusing in on the self and what we could be doing to drive stress, drive low progesterone, drive thyroid dysfunction, we love to focus on, oh, we can restrict this or we can restrict this. But it keeps us in this state of semi-healing where we tend to feel better, and then we of course binge or splurge because we're I want a latte, and then you go and drink caffeine and you feel like shit again. It's because you didn't fix the issue, you just started blaming other factors for the issue. And cutting out those things didn't really do much except for make you feel good for a short period of time, and didn't really fix anything. If we need approximately 100 grams of protein in a day, how much would it be okay for that to be made up of collagen or gelatin? I would say usually about 20%, so 20 to 30-ish grams of protein a day would probably be accurate. So that would be about 4 tablespoons, because 1 tablespoon of collagen provides about 5.5 grams of protein. So 2 tablespoons is about 11 grams. And so, yeah, I would say about 22 grams-ish, so 4 to 6 tablespoons. Do cruciferous vegetables affect thyroid? Yeah, they're goitrogenic, they're very anti-thyroid, and many of them have been, created by human beings. A lot of people think broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage are all different foods, and they're actually in reality they all came from very similar foods or the same food, and they were kind of hybridized to become these different vegetables. So I'm not a big fan of cruciferous vegetables. not because they're bad, but because a lot of times they just slow everything down in the digestive tract. They're pretty goitrogenic, and a lot of people are like, they're so great for estrogen detox because of the DIM in them. And I'm just like, no, like, I mean, they can maybe help bind to some estrogens and carry them out, but that's nothing a raw carrot or a sweet potato can't do. So I would opt for those things, which are very nourishing and very easy to digest. TMI, I pee literally about 20 times a day. Any tips for lowering adrenaline other than balancing meals, often to lower stress? I mean, sometimes with certain situations, which we know, like you have a very specific situation, you can be urinating a lot to move things out, detoxify. I'm wondering if you're digesting protein well. That would be something to maybe consider, like how's your hydrochloric acid. That could be something to maybe experiment, just maybe doing like some ACV before meals. See if like boosting your stomach acid helps at all. I'm trying to think and it could just be like changes that you're going through, but like we talked about today, it totally could be low progesterone. So, I would experiment with a few things because you're really good about balancing your blood sugar and eating frequently and prioritizing yourself and your sleep. I would explore progesterone. I would explore protein breakdown, like things that will boost stomach acid. And then, if nothing works and you just feel like things are going through you, it could just be like your mineral issues at play, like your body's having a hard time hydrating. Or it could be that the body's just detoxing, because one of the ways that we detox is through the urinary tract. So that is a possibility. So those are some things that I would maybe consider. Which live on YouTube talks about your hair routine? I looked, but I had a hard time finding it. I don't think I have a live that talks about my hair routine. I just recently did a story on it, and it's labeled hair care under my story highlights. And have problems with anemia. Yeah, anemia is actually usually copper dysregulation. It's very important to understand that ferritin's not a really great marker for iron. I highly recommend checking out Morley Robbins and listening up on magnesium deficiency and copper dysregulation. It's very interesting and it will definitely open your eyes. Thoughts on eating only starch and proteins, no fructose temporarily to gain some insulin sensitivity? It would be the opposite, Cecilia. I would never, ever eat glucose and starch to regain insulin sensitivity because it requires such an insulin response, whereas fructose requires very little insulin response. So personally, if I was trying to regain insulin sensitivity, I would do fruit and honey only. And for a little while, and very little starch, like maybe one meal a day. And that's how I would work on that. But yeah, remember that starch is pure glucose and it requires a full insulin response in order to get into the cell. Fructose requires no insulin response and goes directly into storage into the liver or storage into the muscles. So that would be a trade. Best laundry detergent and body wash. Personally, I use Branch Basics for all my cleaning products, including laundry detergent. And then body wash, personally, I do not use body wash. I haven't used it for like 6 years now, just because it messes with your microbiome. A lot of people keep telling me to use Olivia. It's like a probiotic rinse, and I haven't bought it yet, but I've been looking into it just to kind of like rebalance your skin microbiome. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of body wash because we have a very specific microbiome. It would be kind of like rubbing soap on the inside of your gut walls. Like it messes with balance every time we do it. So personally, like pits and bits, but really like the vagina is pretty self-cleaning. Only thing that I usually will do, like if my pits are stinking really bad, I'll like rub up some bentonite clay on those things. But really, I don't use body wash. For diabetics, what would be the first thing you would focus on? Magnesium. I would focus on magnesium bicarbonate specifically. And I would focus on balancing blood sugar manually. So small, protein, carbon, fat. I would probably do a lower fat diet, honestly, and only saturated fats. No polyunsaturated fats at all, because they just wreak so much havoc on insulin sensitivity. But yeah, if I was a diabetic, I would focus on magnesium bicarbonate and manually balancing blood sugar with a protein-rich and quality carbohydrate-rich diet with very little fats that are high quality. What is folate utilized in the body? How is it utilized? I mean, B vitamins are utilized throughout your metabolism runs off of B vitamins. Like you could pretty much say like your body relies upon B vitamins. So folate is one of those, but it specifically is absorbed in the gut and kind of absorbed by others. So it's made by certain bacteria and eaten by certain bacteria. There's a lot of evidence showing that B vitamins act in some way, shape, or form as a prebiotic and are part of this kind of ecosystem in our gut. But of course, we know that these gut bugs are also making us folate that we're absorbing and utilizing in our cells. So yeah, I mean, the whole metabolism is reliant upon B vitamins, including folate. Hi, will you be going over questions sent in your story question box yesterday? Yes, I always go over them. Usually I go over them on the weekends, but they will be posted in my story. So yeah, I would say like either tomorrow or starting Friday, I will go through them, most of them. I use Zoya nail polish. It's not the absolute best, but it's a lot better. Nice. Thank you for the recommendation. I have seen that brand. I forgot about it. Any suggestions for exercise with a bad knee osteoarthritis? Maybe doing like swimming pools or something where like you don't have to put a lot of pressure on your knees. Like resistance bands where you're sitting down and kind of like moving your legs around. But yeah, I would do things that don't require like your knee to have to bend too much. That would be kind of my recommendation. Best trace mineral supplements. Yeah, so usually for like trace minerals, grass-fed beef liver is awesome, whether that's like you can do it fresh or you're going to do it desiccated. Phytoplankton is an excellent source of trace minerals, as is shilajit. So I like shilajit as well. So those are kind of my three favorite like multi-minerals. I did an HTMA and it shows my calcium is quite low, but I've always eaten good quality dairy and I don't have digestive issues with it. Thoughts? Sometimes you're just going through calcium faster than you can put it back in. So that would be something to maybe consider supplementing or doing an extra amount of. I would wonder if like maybe your body's just utilizing that calcium. Do you take vitamin D? Do you take things that can maybe mess with calcification? Or calcium levels like iodine? That's something that can lower calcium very quickly. So there could be some things that like actively lowering lowering calcium, but it could just be that you are depleted in it and you need extra for whatever reason. Lemon water through the day or just in the morning? Oh, and I was going to say, sorry, I'll answer that in a second. When you have low calcium, remember that calcium and phosphorus work together. And people that do a lot of meat without enough calcium to balance it out, this is why I'm such a pro-dairy fan. It's because if you're eating so much meat, it's very high in phosphorus and not high in calcium. And so when you eat a heavy meat diet without enough dairy to balance it out, you tend to get higher phosphorus and lower calcium. And so that is something to consider. You know, if you eat a lot of meat and you don't balance it out with things that are glycine rich like bone broth or dairy products, like enough dairy products, you can find that you're actually causing like more inflammation because there's lots of phosphorus and not a lot of calcium coming in. So that's something that could deplete calcium as well. Lemon water through the day or just in the morning? I think it just kind of depends. Personally, I don't drink it throughout the day just because I don't want to like wear my enamel off my teeth. But I think it's delicious and I would drink it throughout the day if I wasn't so stressed about my teeth. What brand trace mineral drops do you use? I usually use just Trace Minerals Research, Trace Minerals drops. So those are what I usually use. Or I take Shilajit in the morning. Lately I've been taking Shilajit because I ran out of Trace Mineral drops, and so I just got Shilajit instead. But I usually will use either or. Hey Jess, what could be the cause of both drastic scalp hair loss as well as both on my arms and legs? No idea where to even start. Doctor says all my labs are normal. Yeah, that's super weird. That's freaky. I would probably do a Dutch test so you can actually see like what all your stress hormones are doing. And have you gotten a full thyroid panel that includes like free T3, reverse T3, TPO antibodies? I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, because I would want to see my sex hormones in depth as well as like my cortisol and cortisone and adrenaline. And I would maybe consider Yeah, I would consider that. And I would also consider like testing like other stress hormones like prolactin, parathyroid hormone or PTH, ACTH, vitamin D. That is really strange though. I would definitely do more in-depth testing. Sorry if you already answered this, but what is the first thing you suggest with PCOS help? I cannot stay consistent with my foods and I'm always confused on who to listen to and I feel like a failure. Yeah, I think it's just really important to drown out the noise. Personally, when I was like first on my journey, I just unfollowed everyone that had an opinion about PCOS and just started realizing that unless I just nourished my body and started with the foundations, like and acknowledge that my body is worth it, like I have the worth to do so, then I'm gonna never be successful, because it feels like you're getting on the wagon and off the wagon, on the wagon and off the wagon, and it can be really very confusing. So the first thing that I suggest is getting to a point with your food where you understand that nourishment is foundational forever, meaning that you can never ever ever feel good regardless of if you have PCOS or not if you are not fueling yourself well. This is going to be true for every single woman on this planet in every situation, regardless if you're a mother, if you are a career woman, if you are a student. You need to be fueling yourself well. Why do we expect to be able to use our vehicle without any gas in the tank? It makes no sense. So that is foundational. We have to understand that unless we do that, unless we get that through our heads, we will never be successful. Then the second thing is, once you feel like you get that through your head, you're like, wow, my body is a vehicle for pursuing this life, pursuing my purpose, I need to nourish it well. You start to make decisions based on that rather than like, oh, I'm doing this for PCOS. To me, that's not a really great motivation. I don't really want to serve my disease. To me, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't do anything for PCOS. I do it for Jessica. I do it for me. And I do it for you guys because I know that if I'm not fed well, I can't help any of you. And so it's really important to understand that being fed well is just the fundamentals of living a good life. Feeling good all the time, having the energy, having joy, not feeling so irritated all the time, not feeling so snappy and you want to kill everyone. You really do need to make sure that that is a fundamental belief system. Once you believe that, it's really not that hard to make sure that you're fueling yourself well. You understand that every single choice that you make is going to affect you for the next 24 hours. And it's going to either affect you positively or negatively. And you get to decide. That's so much power. That's awesome. To me, that's super empowering when I get to say like, wow, the decision I make now is providing me minerals and nutrients. And that is going to help my body, not just right now, I'm going to feel really good, but it's going to help my future. So it's really important to see food in a different light. And then it takes some time. You have to really just be consistent, but give yourself grace. You think like I'm perfect all the time. I just roll things off my back. Like if I have pizza one night, I have pizza one night. I don't really stress about it. Like I just move on. It's not a big deal. It's just pizza. It's not like the big bad wolf, So it's just super important to understand that like consistency is key. Doing things day in and day out and day in and day out tend to make more of an impact than like that occasional pizza or that occasional whatever that you tend to do. And then also, you feel like you're falling off the wagon or on the wagon, there's a problem. You're seeing foods as good or bad. To me, there's a pizza that's made of einkorn flour and organic tomato sauce and Parmesan cheese and high quality salami is a very different food than that nasty Pizza Hut pizza. Just because they're both pizza doesn't mean they're any way, shape, or form equal to one another. And so, don't stress about eating pizza. Stress about eating the crappy pizza. Don't worry about eating the food that nourished you and gave you the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you needed. So I think it's really important to understand that food is just food. However, you have the power to really change how it affects your body by just manipulating the ingredients in the food. But seeing food in a different light is usually what I recommend. Stop seeing food as good or bad, and start seeing things like nourishing yourself and exercise, not as chores, but as the fundamentals. Like, I want to live my best life possible. I only get one chance here, and I don't want to be waking up grouchy because I had a Netflix binge until 2 a.m. and I ate like shit the day before. I don't want to be like kind of grouchy with my clients because I don't really feel that good. You know what I mean? Like, I really have a choice. What I do day in and day out is going to affect how I feel, which is going to affect how I live. Is turmeric overhyped? Personally, I think so. I don't think it's like bad, but I think it's gross, so I don't like do a ton of it. But yeah, I'll make like curry once in a while and put turmeric in some stuff. Like, I go through periods where I like want to like grate some turmeric into my eggs and stuff like that. But I'm not really like, I don't think it's overhyped, but I don't think it's like as amazing as everyone says it is. What natural things do you like to do for fever, virus? A lot of times I am going to kind of let my body get sick because, remember, when we get sick, our immune system gets stronger. We tend to feel a lot more rejuvenated after we're done. And for me, like, I don't like to get sick, but sometimes I need it. So I will take like really hot Epsom salt and baking soda baths. I'm making sure that I'm replenishing a lot of electrolytes with things like coconut water and bone broth, just hydrating. I eat if I feel like eating. I make sure to eat pretty nutrient-dense foods, so things like liver or oysters, I'm going to definitely implement them some way, or I'll take like desiccated liver and make sure I'm like eating oysters pretty often. I keep eating nutrient-dense until I don't have an appetite, which is usually my body saying like, hey, I need to chill for a sec. I do take activated charcoal in the evenings, and then I take oregano and elderberry. I usually will get like if I feel like I'm getting sick, something's coming on, I run to the health food store, grab some elderberry syrup, and I start downing that like every couple of hours, and then just do oregano, and usually I will feel better. I'm new to your channel and wondering what we're supposed to include and eliminate to follow your protocol. I'm not really a big fan of eliminating much. I am just all about nutrient density and quality. My protocol, I guess you can call it a protocol, really, barely. I'm sure my fully nourished students would say like, haha, Jessa, I don't give like much of a protocol, but I do recommend doing nutrient-dense foods that are getting most of your carbohydrates from roots and fruits. I don't think that like grains, beans, nuts, and seeds are really going to be in your best interest if you're trying to get to a point of healing. They tend to be very estrogenic and hard to break down. I'm not a huge fan of like tons and tons of vegetables, tons of cruciferous vegetables or raw leafy greens. Again, very hard to break down. So I recommend like a little bit of cooked greens if your body really wants them, or none at all. Roots and fruits are where it's at. I'm getting about 100 grams of bioavailable animal protein every day from either, meats, dairy, eggs, collagen, gelatin, bone broth, shellfish, whitefish, and then high quality fats from saturated sources, so animal fats, and coconut oil. And usually that is enough to get you feeling really good, but I teach that in depth in my online program, Fully Nourished. I have always had extremely cold hands and feet ever since I was little. My dad has the same. Could it just be genetics? Probably not. Usually we are past hormonal issues from our parents, and so I would say we don't ever really blame things on genetics, at least in Just Gash Wellness, because genetics are not, people love to blame genetics when they don't want to figure out the root of the problem. But yeah, usually that's a high stress situation, so lots of stress equals thyroid suppression, which equals cold hands and cold feet. Would you have an insight on vertigo? Wondering what instigates it and what might be able to help to create balance. I haven't really been able to pinpoint it. I've had quite a few clients who struggle with it. I have noticed like a stress component. I've also noticed that chiropractic does tend to help, so really helping with alignment. I have noticed made an observation that many of my clients that have vertigo tend to either be people who exercise a lot, and we've kind of been able to pinpoint like, oh, they've squatted wrong for a long time, they've gotten themselves out of alignment, or they sit a lot for their job. They're very sedentary, which definitely messes with your pelvic floor and how your hips sit. So seeing a chiropractor tends to help a lot of people that I've worked with vertigo, but then some have actually found that B vitamins help as well. So have I been able to really pinpoint like what it could be? How much vitamin E is good a day? Like 400 IUs daily? Yeah, usually most supplements are going to be 400 IUs. Fruit juice is sometimes not recommended because of the spike in blood sugar. Is that something to worry about? I personally don't worry about it because I never recommend drinking it alone. It's always done with a protein and some type of maybe a little fat. Personally, I always put collagen in my orange juice, or I drink an orange juice with a meal that has protein. I never drink it alone. Remember, fruit juice doesn't really spike blood sugar that much. Well, depending on what type of fruit, because a lot of it is fructose, and fructose doesn't really spike insulin a lot. And if your body's uptaking blood sugar fine, you're going to be okay. So personally, I don't recommend drinking it alone, especially in high amounts, but that's not really my worry. This obsession with blood sugar is really kind of weird because blood sugar is good. That's why your body literally eats itself to make blood sugar when you're stressed. Like, I'm just kind of like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to spike my blood sugar. I'm like, don't worry. If you don't eat it, your body's going to make it. Don't worry. What does NAC supplement do for the body? It was recommended to me to help with inflammation. N-acetylcysteine is used for multiple different purposes. Personally, I don't use it anymore in my practice because I think there are other things that are a little bit more potent or beneficial, but it is a precursor to glutathione, which is that master antioxidant of the body that the liver makes. It also is considered a biofilm breaker, meaning that like if you have overgrowth of bacteria or parasites or funguses, it can break down the little jelly-like structures that live around them. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, like usually it's recommended for liver health and for like gut stuff that's going on. So I don't know why someone would say it's for inflammation. What are your thoughts on eating condensed milk, normally used when making fudge? Is it okay on its own? I personally do make fudge. I tend to add collagen to it just because I like to add a little protein to stuff. Or if I'm going to eat it with like a coffee, I'll add collagen to the coffee. But yeah, I make fudge with condensed milk as well. Weed and hormones, yay or nay? Remember, guys, that marijuana and weed feels really good because it is increasing cortisol. So it's anti-inflammatory because cortisol is a steroid. And so that's why you get the munchies or you get hungry when you smoke. It's because you are in a stressed environment, a survival state almost. And there are other things going on that we don't quite understand, but there is a cortisol component to it. And then like marijuana smoke is known to be a little bit estrogenic. So I think if you have like really balanced hormones, the occasional smoke is not going to kill you. However, if you're doing it really chronically or constantly, and you're having a really hard time balancing blood sugar or balancing your hormones, there could be some issues going on with it. So I think it's always in context. I don't think it's like the worst thing. But if I'm finding that a lot of my clients that smoke marijuana, they tend to have a harder time managing their stress. Their stress hormones tend to be really bad. They're waking up with high temps and pulses, so that shows me that they're waking up with adrenaline. A lot of people use it to sleep, which I totally understand because it helps them sleep. But what's happening is like, why you always want to get to the root of like, why can't I sleep in the first place? And then usually the need for weed goes down once you can get stress hormones down, get blood sugar balance, and just get you generally feeling better. Is black coffee okay to consume after balanced meal or never black? I love the taste of black. I think it depends. It's a context thing. Again, I probably wouldn't drink black coffee. If I would, like, if you really wanted black, I would like say at least add some sugar to it. So it's not so just like jitter inducing. But if you're someone that like really loves it, it's like the thing that you look forward to, I would just kind of check your temps and pulses 30 minutes after you drink it to just make sure you're not going into like a complete adrenaline state, like your pulses aren't out of control or your temps aren't super high. But yeah, I personally wouldn't do it myself just because I'm so sensitive. I would at least add some type of sugar like honey or cane sugar, just regular white sugar, or like maple syrup or something like that. But I feel like white sugar probably will make the taste just like a little different. But yeah, I know like black coffee is really delicious. I used to be someone that like used to chug it black. So, but now I know why I don't do that anymore. But yeah, I think it just depends. If you do really well consuming it after a meal, I wouldn't stress about it. What kind of vinegar in carrot salad? Personally, I do white vinegar, but a lot of people will do apple cider vinegar as well. Hey Jess, any suggestions for scalp psoriasis, avoiding prescription medication, and limiting use of liquid steroids? I would look for a gut, like an internal driver. Like gut issues are usually going to be drivers in psoriasis, gut imbalances, gut inflammation, irritation, leakiness going on. So like I would probably do like higher dose gelatin, bone broth before meals to kind of seal the gut before I eat. I would probably limit the intake of inflammatory foods, at least for a while. So that would be like beans, grains, nuts, and seeds. Lots of like raw vegetables tend to be pretty irritating, and even like cruciferous vegetables can be really irritating. And what people don't understand is when I say those foods, they're like, oh my gosh, those are all the foods I thought were healthy. Why I say that is, remember, the inside of your gut is very delicate. If you feel like it's a mucousy, delicate, one cell wall, beautiful skin. Think of that. And then I want you to take like the roughness of like quinoa or the roughness of kale. And I just want you to like rub it against your skin. And then I want you to like picture this like environment where everything's like really hot and wet and just like rotting. There's lots of stuff just rotting there. It just is an environment for just irritation, inflammation, bacterial overgrowth to just flourish. And so what we're doing by limiting what I call fermentable fibers is you're taking away any potential things that are going to actually cause physical irritation, which is going to allow you to absorb and digest the nutrients from your food so much better. And foods like dairy, for example, are not going to irritate you as much because you're not constantly wrecking your digestive tract and then in consuming dairy, and dairy's causing all this bloating and issues, and you're like, oh, it's the dairy. And I'm like, no, it's all the other foods that you're eating that are just wrecking your digestive system. So those are kind of very inflammatory. And then for psoriasis, I would also consider doing like a raw carrot salad every single day to kind of work on bacteria balance. What are your thoughts on psoriasis being related to autoimmunity, and how would you work on to reduce it? I have it on my elbows. Yeah, so it's weird. I just answered that. So very similar, but regardless of where we have psoriasis, we really want to work on immune system health, lowering stress. So I talk often about how autoimmunity is usually, it does have a hormonal component, especially things like lupus. They're very estrogen-like. They have usually estrogen driving. So I always recommend whenever there's some type of autoimmune disease, I'm always going to look at progesterone levels. Always. It's so important. You also want to look at how your body's detoxifying estrogen. This is where a Dutch test can come in it can come in handy because you can see how it's going through each phase of detoxification in the liver. And then, supporting liver health is so important. So making sure your blood sugar is balanced, making sure you have those vital nutrients to go through both phases of detoxification. So for phase 1, it's going to be like vitamin E, vitamin C, all your B vitamins. And then phase 2 is going to be all those proteins. Bioavailable animal proteins are really important, especially glycine-rich foods like collagen and gelatin. Then you want to make sure you're never constipated ever, because phase 3 detoxification is the elimination of these toxins that have been broken down in the liver. And if we're not moving these toxins, what's going to happen is they're going to reabsorb or kind of stay stagnant. We definitely don't want that to occur. So when it comes to psoriasis, again, I don't really look at it as like, oh, we're trying to work on the psoriasis. Again, I'm looking at the whole body as a whole. And we're looking at what could be sources of inflammation, what could be sources of irritants, what could be sources of poor detoxification. And everything that I talk about here on my page and on my channel is for these reasons. I really want to take your eyes away from like, oh, I struggle with PCOS, or oh, I struggle with psoriasis, or oh, I struggle with this, and like, why am I struggling with these things in the first place? Because a healthy body will not express its issues in this way. And so we look at psoriasis or the PCOS as this is just an expression of an internal imbalance. This is how my body's expressing this. And that's how we go about it. Have you heard of hepatic insulin resistance? Yes, it's liver insulin resistance. There's a lot of studies coming out that the keto diet causes hepatic insulin resistance. Diagnosed with adrenal issues, been adding sugar back into my diet. Fruits give a boost of energy, but then I feel crashed with weird dizzy head feelings. Any thoughts or tips? Are you eating them with a protein and a fat? That's my biggest recommendation. For adrenal issues, it's always protein, carb, and fat every 3 hours. Always within an hour of waking, and always a bedtime snack right before going to bed. But always together, never alone. How to lower testosterone? My level's 31. Midwife said target range to be around 15. You're looking at possible hyperinsulinemia. So do you balance your blood sugar regularly? Do you practice that? Have you been consistently doing that long term? A lot of times stress will drive hyperinsulinemia because you're constantly allowing your blood sugar to just go boom, 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 boom. And so your body is not uptaking glucose very consistently or well, and so you're going to have to create more insulin. So oftentimes testosterone issues are due to just us not balancing our blood sugar or being good at it. Another thing to consider is vitamin K is very important for keeping androgens down, as well as magnesium. And magnesium bicarbonate specifically is very helpful because bicarbonate is needed by the pancreas. And remember, the pancreas is what is going to produce insulin and therefore affect your testosterone levels. So yeah, it's usually a blood sugar issue, a sleep issue, like you're not prioritizing your sleep, you're looking at a lot of blue lights before bed, not getting enough sunlight could be a factor, over exercising or doing a lot of cardio. I think you said that you don't exercise a lot. I think that's what you said in my live yesterday. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I would look at blood sugar issues. Are you fueling yourself well? Are you eating enough for the amount of stress in your life? If you are doing tons of work, if you're taking care of kids, or you're working a lot, or you're a student, you have to make sure that you're fueling properly for what you're expecting your body to do throughout the day. A lot of us live off of coffee, and then we wonder why we have issues, or we don't eat until like noon as our first meal, and we wonder why we have issues. Wait, so when you take a shower, you just use water? I wash bits and pots only with simple soap, but maybe I drop the soap. Do you have a shower filter you like? Yeah, I honestly, I'm not someone that's gonna, stress about it. Yeah, I use, my Morocco Method shampoo. If I'm feeling I'm a little stinky or it's after the gym, like I said, I'll do, bentonite clay. Sometimes I'll do, a sugar scrub, which is literally just I take sugar in the shower and just scrub. But yeah, I honestly will rarely use body soap unless I'm feeling I kind of want to. I will grab a bar of Dr. Bronner's soap and I'll maybe use it once every couple days on my pits. But yeah, I really let my vagina do its thing, which is just self-clean and rinse it with water well. You definitely want to clean yourself, but don't clean with soap. And then yeah, I mean, I don't, there's no need to, wash my chest. When did it ever get dirty? Or, my arm is not dirty. Unless I was, working outside or something like that. I know this is, TMI, and people are probably ew! But I don't like to really mess with my skin microbiome because I used to have horrible keratosis pilaris on the back of my arms. And I used to, scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and, use all these different body washes and soaps and exfoliants. And when I learned to just leave it alone, it does so much better. And low DHEA. McKenna, I can't remember what McKenna said. You had something else and low DHEA. Yeah, because low DHEA is just going to be stress. Remember, your adrenals pump out so many different hormones, so many different steroids. We've got sex steroids, we've got corticosteroids, we've got mineral steroids that balance minerals like aldosterone. And so when we have any adrenal hormones that are low, we know our adrenals are in need of something. And so a lot of times it's minerals. We've got sodium and potassium issues. We've definitely got magnesium issues. A lot of times we got boron issues, we got vitamin C issues going on, but I would say the most important when it comes to adrenals or low hormones like DHEA, it's going to be vitamin C, it's going to be blood sugar balance, and it's going to be magnesium. Absolutely 100% magnesium. Seen a huge increase in progesterone, and after many months of detoxing estrogen detox symptoms subsided. This past month was back to crazy in estrogen detox. Normal to relapse? I would say yeah, it's possible. maybe if you've seen an increase in progesterone, you are moving in the right direction. I'm wondering if you're going, like you went through another period where your thyroid's getting better. But yeah, it can take time, especially if you haven't been detoxifying estrogen very well for a very long time. Accumulation is definitely possible. But yeah, I mean, it is possible that it can be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It does happen. It even happens to me sometimes. There are times when I'll get really estrogenic symptoms if I am the reason why I know what I know is because I am that girl. Like when I talk about things or when I talk about hormones, like the reason I discovered that is because it's me. So I've had quite the journey, and I'm someone that when I get intensely stressed or I'm not eating enough, or I go through periods where like my ovulation is really stressful and I didn't make enough progesterone for the cycle, I'll usually supplement extra progesterone because I know like I was really stressed around ovulation, so I just know like this cycle is gonna be rough. And so I will get more estrogenic symptoms. So, or if I'm like maybe not eating my raw carrot salad every day, or I'm kind of not doing everything that I usually do, yeah, I can definitely find that my estrogen symptoms will get worse. But there are times when I'll have like a freak cycle where I'm like, whoa, that was kind of a detox cycle. Like there's something going on that my body just needed to move, and I just let it be, like I'm not really stressed about it. I just know like I trust my body's wisdom, and I tend to do that. Now if cycle after cycle after cycle nothing changes, nothing gets better, nothing gets worse, okay, we've got an issue that needs to be worked out. But if you are seeing constant changes and things are slowly over time getting better, even if it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, but things are slowly improving, that is a positive in the right direction. Infrared sauna, same effect as red light therapy? Yeah, absolutely. It's usually a little bit more powerful than just using red light therapy. I love swimming in my pool, but should I be worried about endocrine disruption because of the chlorine? Yeah, we should keep it in mind. I was someone who I swam in high school competitively, so I was in the pool for like 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening for a certain amount of times. Oh gosh, I think about that time in my life, and I literally just think of like the destruction I caused my hormones because I was swimming. I was doing like I was burning thousands and thousands of calories, like thousands. I was swimming for like 2.5 hours twice a day sometimes. And now I think back and I was like, I was not eating enough to handle that. And I was in a chlorine pool where I was breathing in chlorine and I was swimming in it. And so remember that chlorine displaces iodine at the receptor. So we've got our halides, which are, halides are certain molecules or minerals that can kind of act like each other. They're very similar, but they're not the same. So that would be fluoride, chlorine or chloride, and iodine is one of them as well. Bromide or bromine is another one. But so chlorine can displace iodine. And so I was severely iodine deficient when I ran my HTMA even a year ago. I was very iodine deficient and I needed iodine, and actually starting taking it helped me get off my thyroid medication. So I was very iodine deficient from swimming in chlorine. So that's just my lesson. Is I had a very extreme case. I spent a lot of time in chlorinated pools, but it's just something to keep in mind. If you're spending a lot of time in chlorine, maybe consider like putting coconut oil on before, so you're not absorbing as much through the skin, and just kind of keep an eye on your hormones as a whole. Hi, I know I've asked about dairy a million times, but okay, so basically it breaks me out, even raw, but it doesn't make me feel sick or anything else. So now I'm not eating it, but I have huge cravings for it. Is there any solution to be able to eat it again, enzyme? Keep in mind that just because something breaks us out doesn't mean we don't need it. And, if we're breaking out because of it, it's not necessarily bad. There's some internal imbalance that is, causing us to break out, but the nutrients in it, that doesn't make the nutrients in dairy null and void. This is where the argument gets funny when people are like, well, dairy causes acne, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. Your body's causing acne. It's just the dairy that's expressing it. The dairy is not the problem. The dairy has a lot of solutions to the problem, but working on the gut while you're internally taking in dairy, it's probably a good idea. So I would take a spore-based probiotic. I would consider like a broad spectrum digestive enzyme, maybe like something that includes lactase, but those are some things that you could try. And then, are you doing raw carrot salad every single day? Okay, I have like 2 more minutes, so I'm almost going to be cut off, so I'll try to do as many as I can. After stopping progesterone cream around day 26, 27, it takes forever for hormones to drop enough for period. Is this bad? Thanks, Jess. Honestly, I'm not sure. Everyone's a little different. I wouldn't stress too much about it, but if it's like a week or two, that's a problem. But if it's like a couple days, that's usually pretty normal. Carb recommendation for diabetics, low carb or max carb allowance. I don't really say like a max or a low. It really depends on the person and like where they're coming from. But Isaac Pullman has a couple posts on it. So go check him out. He has a really good informational on insulin resistance and carbohydrate intake. If I order a hair mineral test, do you have sessions I could purchase to get the results explained? As of now, I only offer my coaching packages. I might end up offering a HTMA and session bundle coming up, so just stay posted on that. I don't drink a lot of water as I find it makes me go to the toilet all the time very soon after drinking and seems to raise anxiety. Feels like I'm not absorbing any water. Why would this be? My biggest guess would be minerals, specifically magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Maybe minerals are low and so your cells are having a hard time hydrating and taking up the hydration. Which brand of Shilajit do you use? Pill, liquid? I've been using a Himalayan Shilajit on Amazon. I do try to order Mitolife's Panacea when I can, but a lot of times it's out of stock. So I'll do a different one instead. I use Himalayan one from Amazon right now. All right, you guys. Thanks for joining me.